The day is finally here. The day has finally arrived, folks. We can finally talk about this movie. But first, hi. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you've never been here before. Today we are finally going to be talking about the newest Stephen King adaptation movie, Salem's Lot. Now, I've been anticipating this since 2021, and I made a whole video talking about things that are gonna come out in 2022, and Salem's Lot, the movie, was a part of that. However, it is now 2024 and we finally got the movie. So as you can see, I've been kind of anticipating this for a very long time. Now, in preparation for that, I read my very first Stephen King novel, Salem's Lot, right? I read it. It was a chunky book, but I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it was my first Stephen King book that I've ever read, and I gave it 5 stars because I just had to know what was going on the whole time. It was just a good, classic, actually entertaining vampire story that wasn't Dracula. No offense to Dracula. So I finally watched it. I'm a little disappointed that I went straight to streaming. It went straight to HBO Max, which, you know, it's neither here nor there. I mean, once I saw the movie, I was like, okay, this definitely has the feel of a straight to streaming movie, but I kind of thought that this was going to be a little bit bigger than that. I thought this was going to get a theatrical release, and it didn't. There was a lot of setbacks, but again, we're not gonna be talking about that. But if you don't know what this movie is about, author Ben Mears returned to his childhood home of Jerusalem's Lot, only to discover his hometown is being preyed upon by a bloodthirsty vampire. Like I said, this is a good classic vampire story. Something that I really liked in the book, and I was really hoping that they were going to execute it well in the movie, is the amount of vampires that are in this, because there were parts in here, and the book to movie adaptation, the pipeline for that, you know, that's a whole other discussion in itself. There's a lot of details in here that are not executed in the movie, which is fine, but one thing I was really hoping that they would capture is the amount of vampires, and a lot of it was scary. Now, this movie I think is not very scary. That's okay. I just remember reading the book and it kind of freaking me out, honestly, just because the visualizations they would give for the vampires, how someone would be acting normal, next thing you know, they're actually a vampire. A lot of the main story too is with a kid. I think he's like 12 or 13, and that was kind of scary and stressful to think about as well, because I'm like, if I was 12 or 13 dealing with all this, I don't think I would be able to deal with it. So that was executed well in the movie. However, I feel like they could have made it so much scarier. That was something I was really hoping for, because I even saw that when they did the very first adaptation of Salem's Lot, I think back in 1987 or something, it was an 80s movie. I have yet to see that one, which I probably should, but even just seeing the visuals in that, the vampires in that, freaked me out. And I was really hoping that they would do a lot more practical effects, special effects, makeup, IRL, which they did, but I feel like they could have made it scarier. I feel like I was watching a PG-13 movie. I don't think it's PG-13, but it felt like that. And because of that, if you want to see a good, like, I don't know, kind of just like cozy Halloween type movie, because this is taking place around Halloween. It's not super Halloween-y, but it is taking place around Halloween and October. So if you want a movie for the vibes, like, this movie did have the vibes, but I didn't really watch it for the vibes. I wanted to see this book come to life. I feel like something that it was missing, which I feel kind of bad for saying this, was the connection between the characters. Like, there is a love interest for Ben Mears in the book, and it wasn't really executed well in the movie. It was so cheesy. Like, I hate saying this, but it was like, I feel like the acting was just not good. That could just be a personal preference, you know, but I just feel like they had no connection. All the characters had no connection, because there was quite a lot, and not even like them not having any connection, any personal, like, oh, I feel like they're actually friends in real life. Like, they have a good camaraderie, you know what I mean? Even that aside, it was like when the people were by themselves, when Ben Ben Mears was by himself, like his acting alone wasn't good. There was a nurse, her acting wasn't very good by herself either. Again, that's just, maybe this is a me problem. Same thing with Ben Mears' love interest. I already don't really remember her name because she was kind of forgettable. And I remember when I read this book, like I remember her scenes in the book so well. I remember her being very memorable. And they made their connection so much more a necessary part of the plot because they had so much time. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe, again, because this movie was pretty short. It was like an hour 40. But they really, I mean, Stephen King is known for being very descriptive. I mean, have you seen the size of this book? He's very descriptive. But I feel like it was so necessary because it actually made me feel like the characters were actual people. And I didn't get that in the movie. So that makes me feel so bad for saying that because I don't know if it was like the writing or like the actual actor's execution of the character. I don't know what it was, but something went wrong. Something happened that I didn't like. And I don't really want to pinpoint it on it being the actors not being good actors. I don't want to say it's that. So maybe it was just like the writing or something. I'm not sure. But like I said, for the vibes, like the vibes were there. Now, something that I don't want to give any like spoilers away because I don't really think it's necessary. I guess I could give some spoilers away. There will be spoilers in this review. This is your warning for spoilers now, but I can't imagine people really caring about there being spoilers in this, especially because it's on streaming and you can watch it pretty soon. It's not like a theatrical release where you kind of have to wait. You can watch it right now if you wanted to. So the beginning of this, there's a prologue in this book. So there's a kid that lives in Jerusalem's lot. And like I said, he's like the 12 or 13-year-old that is also dealing with all this and also helps them to fight the vampires, which I really liked him in the movie, I will say. And in the prologue, it starts off with him and Ben Mears running away from Jerusalem's lot, basically. But you don't know it's them when you're reading the prologue. I read it and I was like, do I really need to read this? Like, is this important? Who are these people? Whatever. And then after the prologue, whatever, the whole story starts. And then there's the epilogue where you realize it was Ben Mears and the kids. So you actually don't really get that it is Ben Mears and this 12-year-old until maybe about the final act of the book, where basically everyone in town has become a vampire at this point. All right, this vampire is getting around like there's no tomorrow, and those vampires are affecting other people, and they're becoming vampires, and everyone's a vampire. All right, no one's safe, basically. Finding out that Ben and this 12-year-old kid are the only survivors of it, like finding that out in the book was such like a aha, like it was such like a eureka moment. I loved it. I loved finding that out once I was like, oh my gosh, that's who they're fucking talking about in the prologue. I mean, you're like this far into the book when you start to realize that, you know? So it's like I just went on this whole long journey and then it connected to the prologue so good, right? A detail that matters in the book that didn't make it into the movie, right? It was like established early on in the book that Ben Mears and this kid have a long history together, have a connection, they're trauma bonded. It starts off in the prologue that people thought that Ben Mears and this kid were father and son because of how close they were. They like barely talked in the movie. They barely talked. I was like, they have no screen time together. Oh my gosh. And even the same thing with Ben Mears and his love interest. She is so unnecessary, it feels like, in the movie, which is so sad because in the book, I feel like she is necessary in the book. I mean, at first when I was reading about her in the book, I was like, hey, they just wanted to give her a love interest, but they actually connected and it wasn't super cringy to me. I was like, okay, they actually connect on some level. They have good camaraderie, whatever. So then, again, this is the spoiler section. So then when she dies, when she becomes a vampire, I was like, damn, that sucks. I kind of felt it. I was like, sorry to this man. And then when it happened in the movie, he was all crying about it and shit. And I was like, do we really care about this? I don't want to feel like that. You know, I've been looking forward to this movie for so long. I don't want to feel like, okay, is this really that important? I don't want to feel like that in the movie about any of the characters, you know? I shouldn't feel like that about any of the characters, but I did about pretty much all the characters. Again, I don't know if that's a testament to the writing or the acting. So anyways, that's pretty much it for the spoiler section. And out of 5 stars, I gave this 3.5. Might be more of like a 3-star, but 3.5 for the vibes, because this is something I would rewatch for like a October Halloween movie marathon. It would be something I'd put in the background maybe. So that doesn't make it a terrible movie. It really isn't. It's pretty cheesy. There were some parts that kind of got me. And the main vampire that is affecting this town, he is pretty spooky. Other than that though, I don't think this was executed very well. Like, was it worth the wait? Yes and no. Yes, because I finally feel like reading this book paid off in another way, you know, because I read this in hopes of watching the movie right after. Well, the movie didn't come out until like 2.5 years after I already read this book, so I was like, hey, well, I already forgot everything. So that's not fun. You know, I read it in hopes of reading it and watching it would be back to back, and that just wasn't the case. In that aspect, it was worth the wait because I was like, finally, I read this and got to execute my original plan. But in terms of like, if this book didn't exist or was it worth the wait, aside from if the book existed, if it was just like a standalone movie, I'd say no. 3.5 stars for that. With that said and done, I want to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons, and especially Mark Sylvester, James Cox, and E. Thank you so much, and make sure to go ahead and check out my Patreon if you haven't already. Okay, what did you guys think about Salem's Lot? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was just okay? Let me know. Thank you guys for coming along with me on this journey. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all of that jazz. And as always, thanks for watching.